Welcome back, guys. And today I want to talk about Neil Druckmann's response to all the criticism he's been receiving from the fans. But he's not alone. Naughty Dog Studios has been subjected to a lot of hate from some of the fans of the Last of Us community as well. Now, the hate stems from the direction that Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog Studios went with the story of The Last of Us Part 2, which was a portrayal of the original story, which is an iconic story in the gaming community, especially for the Last of Us community. And because of this, they became an outrage and started review bombing the Metacritic score for The Last of Us Part 2. But while all this was going on, Neil Druckmann and the Naughty Dog Studios were listening to a lot of the upset fans and their criticisms. And so Neil Druckmann decided to do two interviews. In the interviews, he kind of addressed some of the concerns that the fans had and explained why he and Naughty Dog Studios decided to go in a different direction for Last of Us Part 2. So in this video, I'm going to show you certain clips where he addresses certain concerns. There are three major concerns that the community have about the story and why they feel like the story was betrayal of the first game. And we'll be showing you each clip and give you my opinion if it's subjective or objective with their criticism. So let's get started. So one of the first clips we're going to show you from Neil Druckmann's interview is the one that addresses Joel's death, because it's been a controversial debate in the Last of Us community and the game community in general. Because you have one side saying that they felt that the way Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog Studios went with that was something that wasn't spectacular, wasn't groundbreaking, but it did make sense. And then you have others disagree with that and outraged about even them killing Joel in the first place, because that's not the game they wanted to play. And the biggest counter argument to Neil Druckmann, Naughty Dog Studios, and the other half of the gaming community is that that's not who Joel was as a character. They changed his characteristics. They changed him. They changed his character traits, where they allow him to trust people that he would never have trusted in the first game, and they put it into context by talking about certain elements in the first game where he met certain people that he didn't trust, and the person that talked him into trusting him was Ellie, not Joel himself. And then in the second game, where they had to make a split decision on how to survive, he chose to go with Abby to a place they don't know nothing about. And they are outraged about it. So that's one of the first clips we're going to take a look at. And then once you take a look at the clip, then we're going to discuss my opinion and if the community is being objective or subjective. So let's roll the clip.
Troy brings up Last of Us Part 1 is this redemption for Joel, this restoration of his humanity. What I've been caught off guard by in terms of the reaction of people to Last of Us Part 2 is this, I don't want to say they missed that in the game, but it's this belief that even after the events of Part 1, even after 4 years, even after getting into, which I thought was the most humanizing moment for Joel in the game, of going into his house and seeing the woodwork he's doing and that he had hobbies and he had all this stuff. Do you think people, similar to what Troy's talking about, but as the character itself, put him on a pedestal and tried to lock him into place in a way that he wasn't allowed to grow or evolve or change or let his guard down? Or, you know, that's been one of the big things I've seen of just like, he would have never trusted the Abby's people. He never would have done this. He never would have said that, right? Like, he's been living the good life for 4 years in a community trying to, you know, be a normal person. Is that fair?
That's the thing that's hard with making a sequel is like, with the first game, there's no expectations. People don't know Joel and Ellie, and now some people think they know them better than we know them, right? Better than Troy knows them or Ashley knows them, and people surprise us, right? People change, people evolve, people all the time. So it's like when the Joel that you see in the beginning of Last of Us Part 2, I mean, after the opening guitar scene, it's like that's 4 years of having lived in this community that's safe. 4 years of like, they meet people on the outside all the time and they bring them in. We have all these notes and stuff that they trust them. I want to just address that criticism because I've seen a lot of like, how come Joel and Tommy trust these people? And it's like, it's not an ambush. They're not walking into an ambush. And actually, Troy and I had a lot of conversations about how do they size them up. And actually, they don't want to stay there. They want to lead them back to Jackson because Jackson is safe.
Yeah.
And actually, what Joel is doing there is like he's sizing everybody up except for Abby because he believes that this girl that he just saved, that's the same age as Ellie, is safe. That wouldn't be the threat. The threat wouldn't come from there. So that's what catches him off guard. But also, again, it's the fact that these guys are not hunters. Like Joel's looking for hunters. These are regular people, just like the people that live in Jackson. And Joel has become a regular person that lives in Jackson as well.
That was a really interesting statement that Neil Druckmann made in the interview. Really interesting. So let's unpack this. So the interview started by asking Neil Druckmann, have we, the community, put Joe on such a high pedestal and locked him in place that he was not allowed to change? And Neil Druckmann's response was, well, Job did change. So basically he was saying, well, even though they put him on a high pedestal, Job has changed. He has evolved. And then the next thing he talked about is the the people that Joe encountered in the first game, that he was so distrusting that he didn't trust, that he would kill on sight, that he would not believe. They were different from regular survivors, and those who play the game know this. Those who Job encountered in the first game were called hunters. He did come around some regular people, but he also did a lot of odd jobs because he was a smuggler, so he did jobs for hunters and other people. So the people that Job encountered and had a lot of problem with were hunters. And what is a hunter and how are they different from regular survivors? Hunters usually occupy territories that usually been ransomed by some type of military force or government. They overthrow that military force or government and take over that territory to hunt and kill people for resources. They didn't trust anybody. Anybody came into the territory, they automatically killed. Some of them even ate people. These people are considered hostile survivors. They are totally different from the people you encounter in The Last of Us Part 2. And I know that's hard to believe, but I played it and a lot of other people in the community has played it and can tell the difference between those people that Joe did when it first came and the people that you deal with Ellie in this game are totally different. Totally different characteristics. And I think that was a great point that Neil Druckmann kind of pointed out in this interview. They kind of debunked the whole idea that he just changed Joe for the hell of it to make a dramatic scene. That's not the case. This was a story that they've been working on for years, even after the first game and the DLC came out. And then the next thing he said that was even more interesting than that was that Joe was living in a city in Jackson for 4 years. Now, when Abby was looking over Jackson and seeing that city, they had power and probably guns and resources. They probably had hospitals, libraries. You've seen that they had a bar and a restaurant. They probably had schools because you've seen Abby and Dina playing in the park with kids. They probably have some type of educational system. They had a small society in that city, a piece of humanity that they lost when the apocalypse first began. And knowing what Joe and Ellie went through in the first game, don't we want them to have some type of normalcy in their life? After Joe made the ultimate sacrifice on not letting them kill her for the vaccine, he gave her the next best thing, a place to grow up and become and have a life. And he found that in Jackson. So living in a city where you get some type of normalcy and you can be human again is very appealing for anybody, regardless on how hardcore of a survivor you are. So the idea that Job changed for the worse is ludicrous in my mind. He changed for the better. And let's look at it let's look at it from this perspective. Everyone changes, even us. We evolve. We grow up and have different ideas and beliefs and hobbies. We evolve over time. This is something that's a truth among us as people, that we're not the same people we were 3 years ago. We're not the same people we were 10 years ago. So why can't a fictional character have the same opportunities? It's ludicrous to me. And I think that he made a really good point on who caught Job off guard. And he also stated that Job and Tommy did not was not led into an ambush. They was not. Abby didn't know who he was. All Abby knows is that Job and Tommy saved her life, and they found a way to escape the horde. That's all that was. They didn't know who Job was until Tommy said something. And even as Tommy talking with Abby's people, Job was sizing them up from what Neil Druckmann stated in the interview. He was sizing all of them up. The only one he wasn't sizing up and if he sees a threat was Abby, because he just saved her life. And she reminds him of Ellie. And he thought that she would not be a threat. And that's what cost him his life. And it fits the context of the narrative. And I don't think it was put in there just for stock value. So now, the question is, do I feel like the Last of Us community were being objective with their criticism? No, they were not. From the clip you just seen, you can come to the same conclusion as me. If you don't, let me know in the comment section below. But I believe they was being subjective when it came to that criticism.